This is so odd. I don't even know what to do with this.
This is unusual for us.
This is unusual for us. So, yeah, how did, like, kind of last minute this
It was serendipity.
Yeah, serendipity. Driving through Noblesville. So we're doing. We're talking about. I'm so lost. What are we talking? We're talking about controlling admin.
And I get to see all your slides.
Yeah, you get to see the magic of how this happens. So. Anyway.
So admin privileges it is.
Admin privileges it is. Here we go. Intro. I do have to say, though, I thought you were going to be joining by a phone today because you were going to be on the road. And so I had something all prepared. I had something all prepared for that eventuality. There we go.
You can continue with
that. I might just.
That's a really old picture. Look how much hair I have.
I know.
It must be like 20.
Isn't that fantastic?
I was 8 in that picture.
Yeah, I did. I might leave it. No. All right, now we'll turn this off.
You need to use that another time.
I love that.
Okay.
All right.
So,
all right. Here we
I
go.
hear we have a meme day.
Yeah, it was. I got a little bit of negative feedback entirely from you on
how boring you are,
on how boring the slides were last time, and again, I don't know. Not sure.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah,
make us small.
Make us smaller.
We're here to amplify.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of the dry slides we normally use, we're just going to use memes today. So this is the starting one, the Oprah, the classic Oprah. Everyone gets admin. But talking through, this is the continuing series on basics for that we started around the new year, and it just keeps rolling. It's like, dear God, when will it end?
When will the basics end?
When will the basics end? That's a lot of basics. We have spread it out. We've had some breaks in there as we've done other things, but going off of the CIS core control, so inventory, vulnerability, now on to the basic of control admin privileges. And I know in our day work, this is another one we see more of this challenge than I think we should see.
I think this is a hard one to ferret out.
Oh, really?
I do.
It's a hard one to know if and when it's going on in your environment. I'm going to ask that as a question. Tell me more about that. It's a hard one to ferret out.
You say it like it's a thing.
Okay.
And it's not one thing. So admin privileges, I mean, these could be, you could probably have to subdivide it a little bit into users who have admin privileges and service accounts.
Sure. Who
have privileges, or times when people use their user account as a service account for something that has admin privileges. And as we like where do you find all that stuff? If you've had, you run enterprise IT somewhere, and you have systems that are 5, 10, 15 years old, maybe software legacy that's been inherited that's 20, 30 years old even, to find all the places where you have privileged accounts built into those things as well as to just like find all the identity providers you have. I think oftentimes when we look at an environment, we're like, well, we know where our identity's at. It's an Active Directory. When we go actually look for it, it's like, okay, well, you have, 15 AD servers that you know about over here, but here are 85 other services that are serving up TACAX or Radius or LDAP or SAML or OAuth
or not to mention the built-in accounts,
the local accounts. Like, so to get your arms wrapped around it, if you think of like an identity as an asset, I don't even think we have our arms around it very well inside of Active Directory, let alone all of these other identity systems.
Yeah. Well, so interestingly, I think, one of those basics is predictably, as we're calling the CIS, is just inventory. It's just knowing, well, what are these admin accounts of which you speak, and having a method to track and enumerate those, to be able to express what those are. So starting with, you mentioned Active Directory, and that is in IT and security has been a practice that I wish was more common. But for me, coming from a regulated, publicly traded company, there was the Sarbanes-Oxley rules, which caused us to have to do some sort of periodic review and be able to make a list and say, here are the at least Active Directory accounts. I think it's the other.
Let me push you on that one a little bit more, though. So I often see organizations that have like their main domain,
right,
and that sucker gets maybe audited a little bit, to your point.
Right.
But then there's anywhere between 5 and 200 other domains, and I know people. The one person who's watching this video is thinking that's not true. But it happens everywhere that we see, because it's like your HVAC contractor.
Certainly, in particular, a particular type of company that's gone through a lot of mergers, acquisitions, divestiture. Okay.
I don't know that it's specifically related to that. I mean, because think about just when we had Windows work groups and all the different like work groups that would be formed. That's similar to Active Directory. Like if you go audit all of your assets, I bet you have dozens. If you're an organization with 1,000 or more employees, I bet you have dozens of Active Directory instances or domain instances that are hanging out there if you have not gone and cleaned them up. And I bet some of those have admin privileges in them.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't been intentional to go clean them up, you have them floating out there.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, and again, that's going to cover one dynamic of identity, which can be typically related to your Windows systems.
Yeah, but that's a 50% of it.
That's a big bucket, but I'm saying, then there's a flip side challenge. So Windows, at least modern versions of Windows, don't have. There's another dynamic of this. It's just like knowing what the ones are that are out there. But again, as a basic, it's eliminating the default credentials where they exist and all this. And I wrote it down somewhere. Mirai botnet is one of the more successful.
Yeah.
That's one of the more successful. Internet botnets out there, and has some self-propagation functions and that sort of thing. And Mirai is spreading itself very effectively
via default username and password.
By a 62 default username. It's not this list of thousands or millions of credits.
But that doesn't even matter. Like, you make it sound like it's a big thing to go through 1 million creds. I went through close to 1 million threads the other day. 750 public instances, 20,000 different usernames, and tested 50,000 passwords with each username. Took 38 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about like, it's just math.
Right.
So,
well, I'm not. My point is, even with 62, you can be.
It's just so fast.
You can be pretty effective. It boils down to there are that many services out
and it's
there.
just opportunistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Linux, Windows, whatever, networking equipment, different IoT, where those default crowds are very effective at.
And I don't know if this is along the train of thought that you have here, but like we had some interesting stuff we were looking at where even when you've moved to like very secure management encryption, and let's say you have like public-private key pairs that you're using and you don't even use username and password, like we see people still using pre-generated certificates in the equipment to do, so it's encrypted with certificates everyone already has. And when we use those certificates, we just get admin access to the box. And so it's probably not just usernames and passwords, for identities that we have to be worried about.
Or certificates, SSH keys.
It's an identity.
Where people may not be thinking about that as in this bucket, but essentially that privileged SSH key is, it's not even username and password. It's just sort of.
It's a certificate-based identity.
Here's a password. Essentially, here's a key that exists on to just log into these boxes.
What about an API token then? Do you throw that in this?
Sure.
So if I have an API token, and that token allows me to go hit the API on your medical record database.
And
I can read, write, delete.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an access credential.
Okay. Well, that makes the problem that much bigger then. Okay. And most people are just using simple bearer tokens for things on it. So anyway, that's.
So we'll hit the memes. We talked about. I love this one.
I'm gonna change my password to admin Cheeto.
Cheeto.
That's probably harder. It's probably not harder. Top 60.
Mirai Botnet doesn't have it yet, so there you go. Before changing any new asset, change all default passwords to have values consistent with administrative level accounts, which is to say, long, complex, and probably more importantly, unique is a big thing there. Admin not being in any way, shape, or form unique. Where I have some thoughts, but where do you see? We talked about this a good amount. Where do you think that this is a challenge in most networks? What do you think is the biggest challenge for folks, or the most unexamined challenge?
I think there are privilege management in non-Windows systems is a bigger deal. As much as you might go in and do an 80 audit and it's kind of roached out. Is that a term I can use?
Roached out. I don't know. I can imagine what that feels like something the youngins are saying.
Pretty chuggy.
Chuggy.
Is that better?
Yeah. I like your drip today, by the way. Did I do that right?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you guys will tell me.
Yeah.
Where were we? Where is this a challenge? Not Windows. You're not so much.
So it is a challenge in Windows, but I think the knowledge base around how to correct it in Windows is higher. So if you're not doing it, it's probably more because you decided not to than because you don't know how to.
Right.
I think when you get outside of Windows systems, and we're talking like Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat, or routers and switches, how to do this, the knowledge base is less. And the impact is potentially higher because I know people are like if I do this, do I brick my router or my switch or
what does it do?
I know how to install Ubuntu with the server desktop and I can make it work, but if I have to turn the bells and knobs, stuff stops working and I don't like that.
Yeah, I think there's also in this space, I think about, you're saying this, but I think about IoT devices, I think about industry specific devices, so manufacturing devices, biomedical devices, where
now you're getting into the nether region.
No, I know, but even you say that, but even in your general purpose company, everybody's got printers and multifunction, the modern printers, multifunction devices, or I see all over the place.
But are you worried about that having the admin creds to an MFP?
Yeah, it's running Linux or Windows.
Yeah, but like, shouldn't you like worry about the admin creds to your FTP server you have on the internet?
Yeah, you should.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is people underestimate, well, it's like a printer, I don't care. Whereas like, well, that's the device, you ain't gonna have CrowdStrike on that device.
Yeah,
So
that's
like,
a good point.
you're gonna get.
But also, I feel like on that I'm going to disagree with you on that to a point because all those MFPs already have software VPN tunnels that are calling home, and like this is not having good admin credentials on your MFP is not.
This is the argument of it's already super bad. You can't
to your point, admin credentials on an MFP is like belt and suspenders. If you've gotten to the belt and suspenders point on that, good for you. But I think this is more of a problem on like critical at things that things that are core assets to our environment, things that host databases or file systems, dork. I don't know. Maybe I'm minimizing MSPs, but like I feel like based on what we see, I'm not just talking like my opinion, like the data.
Okay. Game set match. Damn you. Okay, enough of this.
No, I do have one thing. I think you might disagree with this.
Oh, good.
So I think a lot of this problem comes because people use vanilla install media. They're running like they just accept the default image that came on that router and ran through the wizard.
Right, correct.
Or they use the default install media for Windows or Ubuntu or whatever. And these things are not intended to have good security practices in it. So to me, that's we start with bad. And that's not to criticize Microsoft or Canonical or anybody. They just don't approach it that way. And we as consumers need to know that. But using the base images, starting with bad and trying to inspect quality back into it. And if you do any following of lean or TPS or any type of performance improvement, you need to start with good. And that means don't use the base image. You need to have an image for your Cisco switches and routers, an image for your Windows server, for your Linux servers that have this built in, and you start with good, or you're just not going to be able to inspect enough quality back.
Yeah, this to me, I don't massively disagree. I think I agree. And it, to me, a little bit goes back to a conversation we've had before about we live in a discretionary access control world. Like, start with something generally open,
and then tighten it down.
Yeah, and pick. You get admin, you don't get it. Dial up, dial down, and products that when people are selling products, they start with a usability model, which is like if I get it out the door and you can't make it work on day one.
I understand that. Yeah. From like a consumerism perspective, like you need products to work. But at some point, the question you have to ask is it more labor to inspect quality back into the product than it is to build your own images ahead of time and start with a
I'm saying I think that's definitely an images problem, but it's also a problem in products that aren't necessarily built starting with images. So you can minimize my MFP example, but there are things like...
You can image an MFP.
Well, somebody imaged an MFP.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And again, they're starting with sort of it's going to show up, ready to...
I get that, but let's stick with your MFP example.
Yeah.
So you're working at an institution, you probably have a third-party service that provides these MFPs.
Yeah, right.
What's to stop you from just doing some vendor management activity and saying,
this is the starting point.
Here's our minimum specifications for a starting point, and we're going to do routine inspection.
That's a good point. I like it.
If you're not taking that step to put that in your T's and C's with them, then what are you doing?
And it's at the end of the day, it's probably no more difficult for them to configure and deploy.
Show me how you make a secure base image that you put on this.
Yeah.
That's probably even easier than doing it yourself.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you should do that.
I'm with you. Okay.
I'm going to check your printers before I leave.
Yeah.
This one.
So this to me is, I don't find this complicated. It's an absolute basic, but
I'm going to make it complicated.
Well, I'm going to start with, yeah, in your average business, if your domain admins are logging in with their, with bob.smith@fufubunnycompany.com, and my user credential is my domain administrative credential, and that's just how I log in and how I roll every day. This is when I usually am the defender of how things are in corporate IT.
You are.
But this is one I couldn't wrap my brain around this 20 years ago, and I still refuse to understand why people haven't come to grips.
So I'm going to give you a good, better, best thing.
Yeah, let's do.
Okay. Good is, and I think everybody should have good, is if you're an administrator of any form, you have two different accounts.
Right.
You have Aaron's a user and Aaron's an admin account, and those are different user. It's Aaron.shaver_admin, right? And that's the one that has the admin privileges. That's good. Better is I have that second account and I have multi-factor authentication.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And people are going to disagree with this. I'm going to say it as nicely as I can. If you do MFA for your end users before you do MFA for your admins, you're wrong.
Oh, just wrong. I thought you were going to say something a little more stringent.
No, that's my nice version of it.
Oh, okay.
We have to do, why are we putting MFA on people who have low risk accounts, right?
Yeah, correct. This is the old I'm guarding the printers before I'm guarding the crown jewels.
Right. Because I don't know how many
who would think that was, yeah.
Well, because some salespeople had a stiff somewhere to sell MFA and selling it to all your users versus your 40 admins.
Where's the money?
Yeah. But then we go and they're like, no, we have MFA on all of our accounts. Then we go look at the admins. None of them have them for privilege. Yeah. So that's better.
That'll slow us down as admins, though.
I don't care.
Yeah. We might end up in a situation.
You know what's even slower? Losing your job.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay. All right. So good is 2 accounts. Better is 2 accounts with MFA.
Yeah.
Best ephemeral admin accounts.
Ephemeral. Oh, so
your admin account, you literally go in and say
privilege access. Some of the privilege access.
Least privilege, just-in-time access. Right. So you say, I'm going to go work on this server, and I need this admin account to work for 30 minutes to that server.
Right.
And you go do that, and then when you log out, after 30 minutes, the access is expired. Yeah, if somebody hijacks that account, it doesn't work anyways. That's the best level of privilege.
You can't attack what doesn't exist right now. Exactly,
right. Yeah. And that really brings us to privileged, elevated privilege management. And I think we've all got to move towards these time-based administrator accounts, just having God mode accounts. And I would argue if people are like, well, mine can't expire because that's the account that runs that cron job at night.
Yeah, that runs all of our backups.
That means that you're using your admin account as a service account.
Right.
And you need to create service accounts, not admin accounts, and privilege them separately.
Right. Yeah.
Good admin accounts should be able to be ephemeral.
Well, and I've seen a lot of that practice. You're talking about this mishmashing of admin accounts versus service accounts, but they behave differently, and they should be locked down differently to reflect that different behavior. So service accounts, which are for a lot of people, it's not impossible. It's harder to make those expire because of timings of things.
Yeah, I get that. But then you limit the scope. I can run this.
I shouldn't be able to log in. If this thing is about making backups of this kind of system, I shouldn't be able to log in to all these other systems.
Lot of service accounts are make database calls or things. Then you only get access to that one table in that one database, and you have to come from this IP address.
Right.
Or something like that to lock it down. You don't just give them unfettered access to stuff.
So those, knowing what they are and then having some separation of have admin accounts actually be admin accounts and not commingled, and you're good, better, best. That's the in terms of basics, that's the stuff according to CIS, and I'm good with, there's a lot of
I think if you is this your last slide?
Well, there's one, there's this mishmash of I've had in some of these last ones. There's the, if you were going to go to what CIS calls implementation group 2, which isn't the basics,
Now we're getting into the meat of it.
Yeah, now we're, that this is probably the not basic slide. This slide could be a whole other set of conversations, basically. But the one that I plan, and my meme got a little cut off here, but the bottom right-hand corner, logging and alerting is one that I would pick.
I don't think people are really doing it.
Logging in or alerting or both? Yeah, no, yes, correct. I think that's why you can't flag for alerts in the log files if the log files are empty.
I don't think the log files are empty. I think people, you say, hey, are you doing logging alerting? And then their answer is always, I have this.
Their step one was, well, I turned it on. Maybe.
I'm not even saying that. You say, oh, what do you do for logging and alerting? I have insert product name.
Got it.
They don't even, and then you say, cool, great product.
Cool story, bro.
Where do you have that implemented at? Well, I have these 9 servers plugged into it. Great. How do you monitor the alerts? We don't get any alerts out of it.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to pull that thread.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to specify that a little more because logging and alerting is an enormous space. But as far as admin privileges go, they're really the 2 things that you're looking for. So one is failed
login attempts.
Failed login attempts. And the other one would be changes in membership. I have a new, I've had a failure or, 1,000 failures, or as we've seen, 1,000,000. I have logging and alerting, but no, I haven't seen the 1,000,000.
You ever seen the 1,000,000 password failures that just happened? No, I didn't.
What? Interesting.
Huh. So when we look in your log file, 98% of it's failed login attempts, and you can't detect the signal to noise ratio is high.
That to me would be the one that I might pull it. We already talked about multi-factor authentication. Yeah. It's kind of a big deal, but that's one I would pull in.
Do it on your admins.
Your admin accounts in particular, failures, and then if you could do one more, changes in membership of, hey, I have a new, if it's an Active Directory group, there's a new member of that, God Power group, then that would be good to know. All this other stuff, it's interesting, but probably a topic for another day. All right, well, This is good. I
have one last question.
Yeah.
Does your wife ever complain about how loud you talk?
Maybe.
All right.
It's we'll see y'all next time. We'll all be hopefully in our normal places where we talk at normal volumes or sound like we're talking at normal volumes. All right, that's it.